Hey friend, before you click away, answer me one honest question. How many English lessons have you finished in your life? 10? 50? 200? And how many of those lessons actually made you open your mouth and speak without shaking? If your answer is almost none, then stay right here, because in the next few minutes I am going to show you the one missing piece that no teacher, no app, and no course ever explained to you properly. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly why your English freezes the moment someone looks at you and waits for a reply. So watch till the last second, and if you are serious about finally speaking, subscribe to Wisdomloom English right now, because this channel is built for people who are done just collecting knowledge and ready to start using their voice. Let me ask you something that might sting a little. You can read a newspaper in English. You can understand a movie without subtitles. You can even correct other people's grammar mistakes. But the second you need to introduce yourself to a stranger, your throat tightens, your mind goes empty, and only silence comes out. Does that sound familiar? If it does, I need you to understand something important. This has nothing to do with intelligence. It has nothing to do with how many words you know. The real reason is much simpler and much more physical than you think. Your mouth has never actually been trained to produce English. Your ears have heard it thousands of times. Your eyes have read it thousands of times. But your lips, your tongue, your jaw, they are still complete strangers to this language. That is the hidden truth behind almost every silent learner on this planet. You have been feeding your brain for years, but you have never taken your mouth to the gym, and a brain full of knowledge attached to an untrained mouth will always produce the same result: hesitation, stammering, and that horrible blank moment when you know the meaning, but you simply cannot push the sound out. Today, we fix that. Not with more grammar, not with another vocabulary list, but with a real physical training system that treats speaking the way it should be treated, as a skill of movement, not just a skill of memory. Let me say this as clearly as I can. English is not only stored in your memory, it lives in your lips, in your tongue, in your jaw, in the timing of your breath. Until you actually train those physical parts, you will always feel like something invisible is blocking you, even though you know the words perfectly well. And that invisible block is not laziness, and it is not lack of intelligence. It is simply an untrained mouth trying to do a job it has never practiced. This video is not going to give you another list of phrases to memorize. It is not going to be another lesson where I say a sentence and ask you to repeat after me and then move on. Instead, we are going to build something real together. A daily habit that rewires the way your mouth works, one small session at a time. You do not need a fancy accent. You do not need an expensive course. You do not need hours of free time. You need about 5 minutes, a clear method, and enough courage to sound a little clumsy at first, because that clumsiness is simply the entry fee for real fluency. Stay with me, because the next part is where everything starts to change for you. Part 1. The uncomfortable discovery. Let's slow down and look at this properly. Every language has its own physical shape inside the mouth. Your native language taught your tongue exactly where to sit, how fast to move, which sounds to blend, and which ones to skip. You built that skill without even noticing, through years and years of daily repetition since you were a toddler. Nobody handed you a grammar book before you learned to talk in your mother tongue. Your mouth simply practiced, over and over, until the movements became automatic. Now think about English. Unless you grew up speaking it daily, your mouth has almost zero physical history with it. You know what the words mean. You can even write them correctly. But your lips have never practiced the rhythm. Your tongue has never practiced where to land for certain sounds. Your jaw has never learned the natural bounce that English speech carries. So when you try to speak, your brain sends the command, but your mouth, untrained and unfamiliar, hesitates, stumbles, and eventually shuts down out of pure unfamiliarity. Here's a comparison that will make this click instantly. Picture someone who has watched hundreds of hours of guitar tutorials online. They can explain finger placement. They know every chord by name. They could even teach a theory class. But the moment you hand them an actual guitar, their fingers fumble. Because knowledge was never the missing piece, practice was. Speaking English works exactly the same way. You are not missing information. You are missing repetitions. This single realization changes everything, because it means the fix is not study more. The fix is move your mouth more, and move it the right way. You don't need a native accent. You don't need a fancy vocabulary. You need your speaking muscles to become familiar with the shape of this language. The same way a dancer's legs become familiar with a routine after enough repetition. Once your mouth stops being a stranger to English, your confidence stops collapsing every time you need to talk. Let's go a little deeper into why this happens biologically, because understanding it will make the fix feel obvious instead of mysterious. Every sound in your native language has a specific home position for your tongue and lips. Your brain built these home positions through thousands of hours of listening and repeating as a child, long before you ever studied a single grammar rule. Those positions became automatic, effortless, invisible. You never think about where your tongue goes when you say a word in your mother tongue. It simply happens. English, however, has its own set of home positions, and many of them do not exist in your native language at all. Certain consonant blends, certain vowel lengths, certain moments where a sound almost disappears between two words. None of that was ever built into your muscle memory. So your mouth, quite reasonably, hesitates, because it is being asked to create a shape it has never created before. This is not weakness. This is simply an unfamiliar physical task. And unfamiliar physical tasks always feel awkward the first 100 times, no matter what they are. Think about learning to ride a bicycle for the first time. Nobody rides smoothly on day one. Your balance wobbles, your hands grip too tightly, your feet fumble the pedals. But after enough repetition, your body quietly learns the balance without your mind even trying anymore. Speaking English works through the exact same mechanism. The wobbling you feel right now is not a permanent flaw. It is simply the early, uncomfortable stage of building a new physical skill. There's also an emotional layer hidden underneath this physical one. Every time your mouth stumbles over an unfamiliar sound, a small part of your brain interprets that stumble as failure, and repeated small failures quietly build a story that says, I am simply not good at speaking English. That story then becomes self-fulfilling, because the more you believe it, the more you avoid speaking. And the less you avoid, the fewer chances your mouth ever gets to actually improve. Breaking this cycle starts with reframing the stumble itself. A stumble is not proof that you're bad at this. It's proof that you're actually training. The same way a sore muscle after exercise is proof of progress, not proof of weakness. Once you start seeing every awkward attempt as a small rep in your mouth's training program, rather than a personal failure, something shifts. You stop avoiding speaking opportunities and start seeking them out, because each one becomes another rep, another small step toward a mouth that finally knows how to move through this language with ease. Part 2. The 5-minute daily mouth workout. Here is my promise to you. Give me 5 focused minutes a day, every single day for the next month, and your speech will physically feel different. Not just in theory, but in the way words leave your mouth. This is not about cramming more hours into your schedule. It's about training smart, the same way a small, focused workout builds real strength over time. Remember this line, because it will guide everything from here. Understanding is stored in the mind, but speaking lives in the muscles. And muscles only grow through repetition, not through reading. This is why someone who studies English for 3 years but never speaks out loud can still freeze in a simple conversation, while someone who studies for 3 months but practices speaking daily can hold a decent conversation with confidence. The gap between them is not knowledge, it is repetition of the actual physical act of speaking. Think of your daily 5 minutes as a tiny gym session for your mouth. You wouldn't expect to build visible muscle from one workout, but you also wouldn't skip workouts just because results aren't instant. The same patience applies here. Some days you will feel awkward. Some days you will feel like nothing is changing. But underneath the surface, every single repetition is quietly reshaping the way your mouth handles this language, even on the days it doesn't feel like it. So let's break down the exact 5-minute system, step by step. Step 1. The warm-up. 1 minute. Just like an athlete stretches before running, your mouth needs a quick wake-up before English mode kicks in. Try this simple routine. First, hum gently with closed lips for 5 seconds, 3 separate times, to loosen tension around your mouth. Second, stick your tongue out slowly and pull it back in, repeating this 10 times to loosen the base of your tongue. Third, open your jaw wide and close it gently, 5 repetitions, to release stiffness around your jawline. Fourth, stretch into a big smile, hold it for 5 seconds, then relax, and repeat this twice. None of this needs to look elegant. It only needs to get your mouth moving and ready. Step 2. The mirror confrontation. 1 minute. Stand in front of a mirror and look directly into your own eyes. Choose one short sentence. Something like, "I am building my voice one day at a time." Say it slowly the first time, paying close attention to how your lips and jaw move. Then repeat it 4 more times, slightly faster each round, without breaking eye contact with yourself. This single drill does something powerful. It kills the fear of being watched, because you become your own first audience. Within a few days, that awkward feeling fades, and within 2 weeks, you'll notice a new kind of steadiness in your voice. Many learners skip this step because it feels silly. Talking to your own reflection can feel strange at first, especially in a language that still feels unfamiliar. But this small daily act of facing yourself directly is one of the fastest ways to dissolve the fear of being watched while speaking, because you learn to tolerate your own gaze, your own small mistakes, your own imperfect first attempts, in a completely private, judgment-free space, before you ever bring that same voice into a room with other people. Step 3. Echo practice. 2 minutes. This is the heart of the whole routine. Pick any short audio clip, 5 to 10 seconds long, from a podcast, an interview, or a short video. Listen once, then immediately try to copy it exactly, matching the speed, the rise and fall of the voice, and the rhythm, not the meaning, the sound. For example, if you hear someone say, "That's actually a great point," don't slow it down or translate it in your head. Just copy the sound wave with your own mouth. Repeat the same clip several times. This is exactly how babies acquire their first language, by copying sound before they ever understand grammar. A baby doesn't sit down with a textbook to study verb conjugation. They simply hear sound after sound, over and over, and their mouth slowly learns to reproduce it through pure imitation. As adults, we tend to overthink this process. assuming we need to understand every rule before we're allowed to speak, when in reality, copying sound patterns directly, without overanalyzing them, is often the faster and more natural path towards smooth, confident speech. Step 4. The speed ladder, 1 minute. Finally, take one sentence and say it 3 times at 3 different speeds. Start slow, focusing on clarity. Then say it at a normal pace. Then push through it quickly, letting the words blend naturally. For example, I want to speak with confidence. Slow, then normal, then fast and connected. This trains your mouth to handle different speeds without panicking, which is exactly what real conversations demand. Real conversations rarely move at one fixed pace. Sometimes a friend talks quickly because they're excited. Sometimes a question comes fast and unexpected. And if your mouth has only ever practiced speaking slowly, that sudden shift in speed can feel overwhelming. By rehearsing all 3 speeds daily, even briefly, you build a kind of flexibility that lets you keep up comfortably, no matter how a real conversation actually unfolds. Do these 4 steps back to back, and you have a complete 5-minute mouth workout. Here's the full routine at a glance. Warm up for 1 minute, mirror confrontation for 1 minute, echo practice for 2 minutes, and the speed ladder for 1 minute. Total time 5 minutes. Total effect? A mouth that slowly stops feeling like a stranger to this language. Most people chase grammar books and vocabulary apps for years and never touch this kind of physical training. They collect more rules, more word lists, more subscriptions, but they never actually put in the repetitions that build real speaking muscle. That is precisely why they stay stuck for years, sometimes decades, while people who train, even briefly and imperfectly, start sounding noticeably smoother within just a few weeks. You don't need a study partner for this. You don't need a classroom. You don't even need perfect pronunciation on day 1. You simply need to show up for 5 minutes every day and let repetition do what it has always done best, quietly building a skill that eventually feels effortless. Part 3. Speaking in waves, not words. Here's something most learners never realize. Fluent speech doesn't move word by word. It moves in waves. Native speakers rarely pronounce each word separately with a clean pause in between. Instead, they blend groups of words into single flowing units, almost like a musical phrase. Think about the difference between "do you want to eat?" spoken word by word, choppy and mechanical, versus the natural flowing version most speakers actually use, where the words melt together into something closer to "do you want to eat?" Or compare "I am not sure," said stiffly, one word at a time, to the smoother, connected version real conversation actually sounds like. This blending isn't sloppy speech. It's the natural rhythm of the language. And once you start copying it, your English instantly sounds more comfortable, even if your grammar isn't flawless. Here's your daily wave training practice. First, pick 3 short phrases you hear often. Things like, "let me check," "I'll be right back," or "give me a second." Second, instead of saying them as separate words, say them like a short musical phrase, almost like a tiny chant, repeating each one 10 times until it feels like a single sound rather than 3 words stitched together. Third, build your own full sentence using that phrase and say the entire sentence as one smooth wave rather than broken pieces. Fourth, record yourself daily using your phone, then listen back. The very act of hearing your own progress builds motivation faster than almost anything else. You don't need to imitate a British or American accent to sound fluent. You need rhythm. A person who speaks with a strong accent but smooth, connected rhythm will always sound more natural than someone with perfect pronunciation of individual words, but no flow at all. Flow is what convinces the ear that you are comfortable in the language, and comfort is what people actually respond to. Let's look at a few more everyday examples, so this idea really sinks in. A learner might carefully pronounce, "I have to go now," as 4 separate, clean words. A comfortable speaker lets it melt into something closer to, "I have to go now," with the words leaning on each other naturally. Or take, "What is that?" said stiffly word by word, versus the relaxed, blended version most conversations actually use, closer to, "What's that?" These aren't lazy shortcuts. They are the natural result of a language built for speed and connection, rather than isolated, careful pronunciation. Once you start actively listening for this pattern in shows, songs, and everyday conversations, you'll begin noticing it everywhere. And that awareness alone starts training your ear to expect and eventually reproduce that same natural blending in your own speech, almost without conscious effort. Here's an easy way to practice this blending effect on your own. Take any sentence you already know well, write it down, and then underline the words that naturally connect to their neighbors. Practice saying only those connected chunks first, in isolation, until they feel like a single unit. Then slowly build the rest of the sentence around that chunk. Doing this with just 2 or 3 sentences a day, consistently, will train your ear to notice blending everywhere you go, in songs, in shows, in conversations, and your mouth will start copying that pattern automatically, without you even trying. Part 4. Training the mind behind the mouth. Now let's talk about something equally important that most people ignore completely: the mental side of speaking. You can train your lips and tongue perfectly, but if your mind is flooded with fear the moment you open your mouth, none of that physical training will show up. Your brain and your mouth have to work as one system, not 2 separate parts. Here is the biggest mistake most learners make. They obsess over correctness before they even open their mouth. They ask themselves, "Is this the right tense? Did I conjugate that properly? Will people notice my mistake?" But here's what actually happens in real conversations. People remember energy and connection far more than they remember grammar precision. A sentence spoken with warmth and confidence lands better than a grammatically perfect sentence delivered in a flat, nervous whisper. So try this. Instead of saying a sentence like a textbook robot, say it like you actually mean it. Take something simple. "I'm really glad to be here." And instead of reciting it, feel it as you say it. Let your face and your tone reflect the meaning. This single shift, adding real emotion to practice sentences, trains your brain to associate speaking English with genuine expression rather than a test you might fail. Over time, this rewires a very old association many learners carry from school, where speaking a foreign language meant being evaluated, corrected, and graded. Replacing that association with genuine self-expression is one of the quietest but most powerful shifts you can make on this journey. Next, try practicing like a performer rather than a student. Choose a short sentence, something like, "I can't believe this actually happened," and say it 3 different ways, once with excitement, once with mild frustration, and once with quiet disbelief. Notice how your voice, your posture, and your face naturally shift with each version. This kind of playful acting removes the fear of judgment because you stop worrying about being correct and start focusing on being expressive, which paradoxically makes your speech sound far more natural. Also, train your brain to stop translating. When you hear a common phrase like, "Let's catch up soon," don't mentally translate it word by word into your native language. Instead, attach it directly to the feeling it represents, a warm, casual invitation, so your brain reacts instantly instead of running through a slow internal translation process. Do this with a handful of everyday phrases, and your reaction speed in real conversations will noticeably improve. Finally, involve your whole body. Stand up while you practice. Use your hands. Let your posture shift with the emotion of the sentence. Movement helps your brain lock in memory far better than sitting still ever will. And it builds a kind of physical confidence that carries directly into real conversations. There's one more mental shift worth mentioning here, and it might be the most important one. Most learners treat every speaking attempt as a test they can pass or fail. That single belief is enough to trigger fear before a single word even leaves their mouth. But real conversations are not exams. Nobody is sitting there with a red pen, silently grading your grammar. Native speakers make mistakes constantly. They restart sentences. They use the wrong word and correct themselves. They pause mid-thought. Fluent does not mean flawless. It means comfortable enough to keep going despite small errors. Once you genuinely accept that speaking is a conversation, not an exam, something loosens up inside you. Your shoulders relax. Your breathing slows down. And ironically, that relaxed state is exactly what allows your trained mouth muscles to do their job properly, because fear tightens the jaw and throat, while calm confidence lets speech flow the way you've been practicing it to flow. Part 5. Repetition, but the smart kind. Repetition is often misunderstood. Most people think repeating a sentence 50 times flatly, with no variation, will eventually make them fluent. In reality, mindless repetition builds boredom, not skill. The kind of repetition that actually works has layers, and each layer trains a different part of your speaking ability. Here is a 5-layer repetition method you can use with any single sentence. Pick something simple, like, I don't really know how to explain this. Layer 1. Say it slowly and clearly, focusing on every sound 3 times. This builds the physical shape of the sentence in your mouth. Layer 2. Say it at a natural connected pace 5 times, focusing on flow rather than individual words. Layer 3. Say it with 3 different emotions: calm, frustrated, and amused, training your brain to attach feeling to the words rather than reciting them mechanically. Layer 4. Say it quickly, pushing your speaking speed. 5 fast repetitions, training your mouth to keep up under pressure. Layer 5. Use the sentence in 3 completely different real-life situations. For example, explaining a mistake at work, responding to a confusing question from a friend, or reacting to unexpected news, which teaches your brain to apply the sentence flexibly rather than as a fixed, memorized line. 1 sentence, 5 layers, real transformation. This is far more powerful than repeating 50 different sentences shallowly, because depth builds muscle memory, while breadth without depth just builds more forgotten vocabulary. Most learners default to breadth because it feels like progress. Another new sentence, another new phrase, another checkbox ticked. But your mouth doesn't care how many sentences you've seen. It cares how many times it has actually practiced producing a sound pattern until that pattern becomes automatic. Choose sentences that actually matter to you personally. Instead of textbook lines, use phrases you would genuinely say in your own life, like, I'm proud of how far I've come, or, it's okay if I make mistakes while learning. When the sentence carries real meaning to you, your brain remembers it faster, and your voice naturally carries more conviction when you say it. Let me also warn you about a few habits that quietly ruin repetition practice for most learners. Repeating a sentence with a completely flat, bored tone builds robotic speech, not natural speech. So always add some kind of emotional texture, even in practice. Rushing through repetitions just to finish quickly builds tension in your jaw rather than real fluency, so slow down enough to actually feel each version. Practicing only in your head, without ever saying anything out loud, builds silent confidence that disappears the moment you actually need to speak, because silent practice never trains your muscles at all. And quitting after 1 or 2 days robs you of the exact moment where real change usually begins, because most people start noticing a shift somewhere between day 5 and day 10, right when frustration tempts them to give up. If you can avoid these traps and stick with the 5-layer method on just 1 sentence a day, you will be amazed at how naturally that sentence starts appearing in your actual conversations within a week or 2, without you even planning to use it. Part 6. The real reason you're still silent. Let's be completely honest with each other for a moment. You are not silent because you lack talent. You are silent because your daily habits don't match your goal. There are people all over the world who understand English at an advanced level, who can read complex articles and follow difficult lectures, yet freeze the instant they need to introduce themselves at a job interview or a social gathering. The gap isn't understanding. The gap is practice, specifically active, physical, spoken practice. Think about how strange this actually is when you say it out loud. A person can read a 200-page novel in English, follow a fast-paced documentary without subtitles, even write thoughtful essays, and still feel their hands shake when asked to order food in English at a restaurant. If the problem were really about intelligence or effort, this contradiction wouldn't exist. But it makes perfect sense once you accept that reading, listening, and speaking are 3 separate skills that happen to share the same language. You can be advanced in 2 of them and still be a complete beginner in the 3rd, simply because you've never trained it the way you trained the others. This is actually good news, even though it might not feel like it at first. It means you don't need to start over. You don't need to relearn grammar or rebuild your vocabulary from scratch. You already have the raw materials, the words, the understanding, the knowledge. What's missing is purely the physical rehearsal of turning that knowledge into sound, out loud, consistently, until it stops feeling foreign. That rehearsal doesn't require a classroom, a tutor, or a plane ticket to an English-speaking country. It requires a mirror, a few honest minutes each day, and the willingness to keep going even when progress feels invisible at first. Picture 2 types of learners. The first person spends hours consuming content, watching videos, reading articles, following language pages online, but never actually opens their mouth to practice speaking. The second person spends just 10 focused minutes a day, choosing 1 sentence, running it through layered repetition, standing in front of a mirror, training their voice with intention. After 30 days, which person do you think speaks more naturally? The answer is obvious, and yet most people still choose to be the first type, endlessly collecting information while avoiding the uncomfortable act of actually speaking out loud. Why does this happen? Usually fear. Fear of sounding wrong. Fear of being judged. Fear of that awkward silence after a mistake. But here's the truth nobody tells you. Every fluent speaker you admire went through that exact same awkward phase. Nobody skips it. The only difference is, they kept practicing through the discomfort, while others quit right before the breakthrough. Consider the moments this silence has already cost you. Maybe there was an opportunity at work where a confident sentence in English could have opened a door, but you stayed quiet instead. Maybe there was a chance to connect with someone interesting, a traveler, a colleague, a stranger with a fascinating story, and the conversation ended before it began because your mouth wouldn't cooperate. You cannot get those specific moments back, and dwelling on them won't help you. But you can absolutely make sure the next 30 days look different from the last 3 years. Here's a small mental exercise that helps many learners break through this fear. Instead of imagining the best possible outcome of a conversation, imagine the worst realistic outcome, and notice how survivable it actually is. The worst realistic outcome of stumbling over a sentence is usually a few seconds of awkwardness and maybe a small correction, not humiliation, not rejection, nothing close to the disaster your anxious mind tends to predict. Once you see clearly how small the actual risk is compared to the imagined risk, speaking up becomes a far easier decision to make, again and again, until it stops requiring courage at all and simply becomes your default behavior. You cannot change the years you've already spent staying quiet, but you absolutely can change the next 30 days. Start today with one sentence. Tomorrow, add the mirror drill. This week, try echo practice with a short clip. Build this brick by brick, and within a month, you will notice something remarkable. Your voice will feel less like a stranger and more like something that belongs to you. Fluency isn't a single dramatic moment where everything suddenly clicks. It's built quietly, in small private repetitions that nobody else sees. In the mirror, in your room, in the moments where you choose to practice, even though no one is watching, and no one would know if you skipped it. But those hidden repetitions are exactly what eventually produce the version of you that speaks with ease in front of others. Think about where you want to be in 90 days from now. Not perfect, not accentless, just noticeably freer when you speak. Able to answer a question without a long, awkward pause. Able to introduce yourself without your voice trembling. Able to actually enjoy a conversation instead of dreading it. That version of you is not a fantasy. It's simply the natural result of the small, consistent training we've walked through today, stacked day after day, until it quietly becomes your new normal. You already have everything you need to start. You don't need to wait for a new course, a new app, or a better time in your schedule. You need 5 minutes, a mirror, and the willingness to feel a little clumsy while your mouth catches up to your mind. That's genuinely all it takes to begin. So here's what I want you to say out loud right now. Wherever you are, I will train my voice every day. I will not wait for perfect conditions. I will speak even when I feel unsure, because that discomfort is exactly what builds fluency. If this video gave you real value, join our community here at Wisdomloom English, where we break down practical, no-fluff methods for speaking English with real confidence every single week. Hit subscribe so you never miss the next lesson. Share this with someone who has stayed quiet for too long, and drop a comment below telling me the one sentence you're going to train today. Your voice has been waiting long enough. It's time to actually use it. And remember, nobody watching you speak confidently a year from now will see the quiet 5-minute sessions in front of your mirror, the awkward first attempts at copying a stranger's voice from a video, the private moments where you stumbled and simply tried again. They'll only see the result, a person who speaks with ease. Only you will know how that ease was actually built, one small, unglamorous repetition at a time. Start today, keep going tomorrow, and let this be the month your voice finally catches up to everything you already know.